you show up for pets every day. It's because care is your calling, and it's ours too. We know it's what drives you to make a difference in the health and well-being of every pet. That's because at Zoetis, hundreds of veterinarians are part of our team too, working with you to provide science-backed medicines, technology, and practical support to help elevate your standard of care. Learn more at careisyourcalling.com.
From the Soapbox is the official podcast for the American Animal Hospital Association's digital newsroom, Trends. Here, we take inspiration from the familiar soap notes, but instead of looking at the condition of a patient, we're diagnosing and discussing the state of the veterinary industry. We'll chat about the challenges, trends, and innovations shaping the veterinary world with voices from across the community. I'm your host, Dr. Emily Singler. Thanks for listening. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of From the Soapbox. My guest today is Dr. Addie Reinhard, founder and CEO of MentorVet, and our first repeat guest on the podcast. If you've been listening to previous episodes, you may remember her from episode 9, talking about the Merck Veterinary Well-Being Studies, burnout, and mentorship. If you haven't heard that episode, I definitely encourage you to go back and check it out. In this episode, we got to touch base and catch up on the work she's been doing in the veterinary well-being space since last year, especially the formation of the Veterinary Well-Being Collective, a group of individuals and organizations within the veterinary industry who have been conducting veterinary well-being initiatives of one kind or another. This collective serves as a way for all of these parties to share their work, learn from each other, and plan future collaborations to support veterinary professionals. In our conversation, Dr. Reinhard shared more about the participants, what some of their goals are, and why it felt so important to have more coordination between different well-being initiatives. And that's all I'm going to say for now. You'll have to keep listening to learn more. So now, without further ado, getting another chance to talk from the Soapbox, Dr. Addie Reinhard. Okay, Dr. Addie Reinhard, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Yes. It's exciting. You are our first returning guest.
Oh, that's amazing.
From the Soapbox. So I always knew we would have you back. So you have the distinctive honor of being the first one to come back.
That's nice. That's really nice. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much for being willing to come back. So excited to check in with you and see how things are going.
Yeah.
Because the last time we talked a lot about some of the previous veterinary well-being studies and some of the findings from them, and you had mentioned at that time, because I think I asked you if the studies were going to continue, and you had mentioned at that time that the format was going to be changing a little bit, at least in the short term. And that the Veterinary Well-Being Collective was going to start meeting. And it sounds like at least that first meeting has happened, as we've seen I saw it written up in JAVMA. And I was just hoping you could share a little bit more about the Veterinary Well-Being Collective, sort of what it is and what some of its goals are.
Yeah, amazing. So essentially, this all came about. This has been in the works before I even probably entered into the veterinary well-being space. So back in 2019 was when I quit my full-time job to kind of pursue advanced education around veterinary well-being and research, veterinary well-being research. And when I entered into this kind of budding field, I met with a lot of the leaders who had already been doing work in the space. This is around the time that there wasn't a lot of research out there. There's a little bit. There was kind of some growing resources with like Not One More Vet, but there wasn't a ton of work being done in the space. But there were a few kind of pioneers of the work being done. So individuals like Josh Weissman and Phil Richmond, Marie Holloway Chuck. I remember meeting some of these individuals early on, and I think through those conversations kind of heard this recurring theme of wanting more kind of coordination among well-being professionals. So, we're all doing work, but it's hard to stay coordinated. And it's funny because I did this veterinary human support certificate at University of Tennessee. And our kind of final group project was to design some kind of program or initiative. And during that, we even said, hey, what if we design this association for well-being professionals where people doing this work can come together and learn from one another and share best practices and things like that. So I think it's always been kind of a collective idea even to have
Right.
some kind of group of individuals who are working in this space. And as we saw with the well-being studies, we got a lot of information there. But I think the leaders at Merck were also wanting to start thinking about what can we potentially do to help advance veterinary well-being? What can we do that will make a real impact? And obviously, they're already supporting the work that I do at MentorVet, which is phenomenal, and sponsoring us through supporting people going through our program or through me getting out there and speaking. But this idea kind of came to my mind. I'm like, hey, actually, the people in my community that are doing well-being work have long wanted some kind of way to collaborate. And, we just are so busy. We don't really have a lot of funding to do that. We're all kind of really busy doing our own things. And so they were, we kind of were, I brought the idea to them hey, what if we brought all these large organizations together who are doing well-being work, bring, leaders of Not One More Vet, Veterinary Hope Foundation, Josh Weissman at Flourish Veterinary Consulting. What if we bring, leading nonprofits who are doing this work like the AVMA, NAFTA, AAP, and some of the even academic institutions who are doing research or a lot of work. And why don't we bring these people together and figure out how we can be more coordinated in our approach to well-being? So they said yes. And so we got funding to do this project, which is super exciting. I got to kind of lead the assembling of the experts and organizations, if you will. And so reached out to a lot of my colleagues and said, hey, I'm doing this thing. Would you want to come meet up? And essentially, we had our first in-person meeting in July of 2025 at Merck Animal Health headquarters in New Jersey. And we had a day where we just talked about the past, present, and future of veterinary well-being, and then kind of where we could go from there. So I'll pause there because I feel like I've been just rambling.
Oh no, that's perfect. That's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was exactly the kind of information that I was hoping you would share.
Cool.
And so, and I did want to ask you, I think you probably answered part of this. So about the individual organizations, companies, individuals that were part of the collective, there's quite a long list of them. And it sounds like most of those were people or organizations that you knew of who were in the space and invited them to be a part of it. Was there also some kind of open call where it's oh, we're doing this well-being work? Is there, other organizations? Are there others who want to be a part of that? Or how did that process work?
Yeah. So I reached out. Obviously, it was a little bit limited due to funding we couldn't have. And we kind of wanted to keep the group small anyway to just keep the discussion actionable. We couldn't have 50 people in the room. But I think since I've been doing this work for a while, I knew the individuals who had been doing kind of some of the parameters were organizations or companies who had kind of a full-time employee dedicated to doing well-being work.
Right.
So, we've got or just even organizations who are doing a lot in the space. So AAP was invited because I know that they've been doing research in that space for equine vets. I know that they've been pushing forward a lot of well-being initiatives, a lot of retention initiatives, and they've been doing it for 5+ years.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it was individuals or organizations who've been doing this work for a while, and also who are approaching it from kind of an evidence-based perspective. So they're either involved in research projects or they are doing their own research and evaluation, but there was definitely a focus on which of these, groups or organizations are doing evidence-based work. That was really important in the selection parameters. And then we invited several other organizations that couldn't make it. So they're, just because they weren't on this list doesn't mean that they weren't like invited to be part of it. And this was really like a jumping off point, right? So we wanted to get quite a few of the people who were doing a lot of the most significant work. Obviously, I apologize to those out there who are doing this work, who weren't able to be a part of it and are doing significant work. There's so many people in this space that are doing so much good work. And it was kind of hard because there were a lot of colleagues that I really wanted to be there, and I just was kind of limited. We had, I think, funding for maybe 15 people to be present at the meeting, and so it was hard to like kind of narrow down with obviously this was a collaborative effort with the leaders at Merck to say who needs to be in the room. But one of our most recent discussion points is also like, how do we include others going forward? And that's actually something we're going to be talking about at one of our next meetings, because I have, even since this article has come out, like so many people say, hey, how do we get involved in this collective? This is a cool thing. And we're taking names and we're keeping a list, and we're going to be discussing like how to engage also others who are doing this work, because there's a lot of people doing this work, which is why we wanted to create this thing in the first place, just to have a community for people who are doing this work to share best practices and to kind of get a little bit more coordinated on our response.
That's awesome. I'm so glad to hear that has been the response, that there's been this sort of effort to reach out to you and want to be part of it. And one of the questions I was going to ask you about, you've already sort of answered, that part of the reasoning behind creating a collective was to have more coordination between all these different entities. And I'm just wondering, from the first meeting that you've had and sort of the discussions that have come up, have you seen that there's a lot of overlap between some of the different, because I think each participating organization, like you said, they have someone full-time or they have some kind of initiative that they're already working on. Are you seeing that there's a lot of overlap between the types of initiatives that are currently out there?
Yeah, this is a great question. Obviously, because we're all kind of using evidence-based practices, I think there's an overlap in the approach of, how we're addressing these issues. Like a lot of us are using peer group work, which we know peer mentorship is like a very effective form of support for individuals. A lot of individuals are using kind of education and training, which is also, an approach, strengths-based, evidence-based, using what's worked in the past. So I think that a lot of us, it was really interesting. I think we're all aligned on kind of how we do our work. I would say that there is a little overlap, but at the same time, we're all serving different groups and populations. And it's like, if you think about soda, for example, it's like people prefer different kinds of soda. Like not everybody's drinking the same type of product. And so having different options for people, different communities to go to is often really helpful. So the people that we serve at MentorVet might be an entirely different population than, the individuals who Veterinary Hope Foundation serves. Or there might be some overlap and some ability for us to kind of cross-pollinate and promote each other's resources. And so I think while there is a little bit of overlap, at the same time, I do think that, we're all serving unique communities that are all, vitally important for those individuals in those communities. And so where I think we have the most power is like being able to, lift each other up, promote resources, promote tools that have worked for us. Because I think, there's value in each of these individual groups and how they're doing the work. And every group is offering unique resources too. Like there's some overlap, but there's also a lot of unique aspects. Like, for example, Not One More Vet provides their like support grants to individuals in times of need. So this is like a financial grant for somebody who might be having a hard time or going through some type of issue. For AAP, they're serving specifically like equine veterinarians, or AAVMC is specifically serving the veterinary student faculty community and the student community. And so there's different aspects of these different groups that do have different focuses. And so I think all are important. And yeah, it was really amazing to come together for those couple days. So
I can only imagine the conversations that were had where someone might share something that they're working on or something that's worked well for them, and then another person or organization might have said, "Oh, I want to learn more about that because we have been trying to figure out how to do something like that." And
yeah,
can you tell me, how you got to the point where you are, or could you tell me, how you get around this problem, or how did you make it work, or who did you talk to, or all of that sharing of information?
Yeah, it was so nice. And the way we had designed, because I co-facilitated, or Bridget Hanley from Merck Animal Health facilitated, but we kind of worked together to develop the facilitation guide of how we wanted the data flow. And we structured the questions very much so that it would start with like, here's our understanding of how mental health and well-being have gotten to the place where we are today. And then, it gave everybody after that the opportunity to share what they were working on and all their programs so that everybody could see all the good work being done. And then in the afternoon, we had a lot of time to talk about kind of the future and where we hope to go. And it was really interesting because I think like how we had facilitated it, we kind of broke everybody into small tables for a lot of the day to do small working groups, but then we could check back in as a large group. And at the small working group tables, there was a lot of that kind of like information sharing of like, hey, I've had trouble with sponsorship in this area. How do you approach this specific type of sponsorship agreement? Or can we have a chat? And I had a few follow-up chats with some of the people at the collective afterwards to even like help problem solve on some things. Like, what have you tried that has worked? Obviously, you've excelled in this area, or sharing, best practices on things like that. I learned a lot from my colleagues as well. Even I've been doing this work now for, 7 years. And so, I even learned a few things coming out of that collective that I could use in my own work. And I think that everybody kind of felt the same way of like, oh, okay, like now we have people that we can lean on. And, it's funny, I think in any other industry, you might look at this as like competitor organizations or companies. And I think it wasn't that at all. Like when we were in that space, I think everyone there just cares so much about the mental health and well-being of people in the profession, to the point where we don't view each other as competitors. We're like lifting each other up, sending people like, and it truly creates something that's like, a bigger movement than any one of us could kind of push forward.
Yeah. There's no trophy for being better at well-being than anybody
it's true.
else.
True camaraderie,
So.
for sure. It was really nice to see. Yeah.
Yeah. And you mentioned at the beginning of your answer, I was going to ask you about this because it's been a few years since the last well-being study. So was there much of a discussion about how these groups see the current state of well-being within the profession? I mean, maybe that's reducing. It's too simplistic to describe as a whole or as like a monolith. But was there discussion about that?
Yeah, we talked a lot about trends because I think we're so tapped into everything happening in the industry in this aspect, and it was really interesting, and it's something that I've been seeing. So I think for a while it was like gloom and doom, and then I think in the last like year or two, a lot of my colleagues and me included have been seeing a little bit of a shift into like, oh, like we have resources, like there's a lot of resources out there, and even some like hope, and some of the vet students kind of feeling more empowered. And I think, just like more, even in a time where it's like hard and challenging, I think we at least anecdotally have been seeing a little bit of a shift in the last year or two, and some of the conversations that people are having around well-being. We did find in the last Merck Animal Health well-being study that veterinarians are actually like more satisfied in their jobs than people on average in the general population. And it's funny because most vets think other vets are not satisfied with their job, but like 75% of vets are satisfied with their job. So it's like a mismatch, mainly because of like the media, like, oh, this is horrible, this all burning down, right?
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think that's starting to shift, especially with that latest study. I think as we're coming out with this saying like, hey, actually it's not as bad as it looks. There are still people that are having a hard time. So yeah, I think that was kind of an exciting thing, I think, to hear from my other colleagues that like, yeah, like I think we are like moving the needle a little bit here. And I think really mostly probably due to the people doing the work in this space, like pushing this forward and having the resources for people.
That's encouraging. It's good to have
Yeah.
some encouraging
Some
news. I
Yes.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of other people do. Yeah, I guess I would say anecdotally that has been my experience from the stories that I'm hearing from others. And I think it's interesting because I don't know, if you think back to a couple of years ago, it seems like maybe we were at this point where you were hearing all these stories about it being an associates market and everyone could ask for these sort of um, like really big salaries potentially compared to maybe what some of us who started a few years ago felt like we were able to ask for, particularly as a younger graduate. And maybe we feel, I don't know if it seems like maybe that bubble is starting to burst a little bit, like we're seeing that maybe that's not sustainable. But even so, it seems like anecdotally, I'm not hearing as much doom and gloom as
Yeah.
I was a few years ago.
Yeah. Yes. I'm definitely not. And I think the people coming into our programs, like we're still seeing burnout and people having a hard time. But I think we're also seeing a lot of people who are just like proactively using resources. And I think a lot of this
Yeah.
starts kind of upstream as well. I think a lot of the vet schools are like focusing on spectrum of care and well-being in their curriculum. And I think that's helping a lot as, veterinarians are coming into practice. I still think we have a lot of work to do with the veterinary team members, though. I think the veterinarians are definitely like, the tide is turning, but I think we still have some room to grow with our team.
And you had some representation from some of those groups in this collective, at least from NAVTA.
Yep.
So do you get the sense that there's a lot of desire to kind of come up with solutions and a lot of interest between all the different members to sort of brainstorm specific solutions for non-veterinarian team members? Because
Yeah.
I mean, we can't do our jobs without them for sure.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of talks during the collective of, this is not just, the veterinary profession is not just veterinarians. And
Absolutely.
it's everybody that kind of encompasses that. So I do think that there was a lot of discussion around like, hey, to make sure this is a healthy profession, we need to make sure also that we're tending to our team and also like animal care workers and shelters. And like, there's a lot of people who still need a lot of support. And so I do think that a lot of the organizations are kind of thinking about that. And that's kind of the cool thing that we're starting to establish here with this collective is like now that we're all kind of talking and in touch, kind of the latest is after the meeting, the first kind of item on our agenda was to come up with a shared definition of what is veterinary well-being, because I think we all just have been operating and working in the space without kind of a shared definition. So we're almost to the point where we have a shared definition and some terminology that like we can all point to and say this is what these things are. I think some shared terminology would be very helpful for people in the profession as we're kind of approaching these issues. But above and beyond that, like we have the ability to kind of shape messaging as well. And, with our reach, our respective reaches of each of these organizations are quite large. And to be able to say like, hey, this year we want to focus on this group, or this year we want to focus on, this type of messaging for this population. And then it allows us to kind of have a bigger voice than any one organization would have alone. And so if we're all saying like, hey, industry, like we need to support our veterinary technicians, for example. If we're all saying that, then I think we have more power to kind of sway what's happening as far as like where resources are going. So it's very exciting. I'm really excited about the kind of influence and sway that this group can potentially have. And the ability to like really create. And I think that's another thing that could come from this. And essentially the next step of our collective is to split up into working groups so that we can really get some work done on some of the things that we've really wanted to do, like create some shared terminology, determine how we might want to include future people into the collective and provide resources to develop some assessment tools so that people actually know how to measure well-being and burnout and things like that. So, I think we're at the very beginning of something really exciting that has the potential to really impact the industry in a large way.
Yeah, you just hit on what my next couple of questions were going to be about too. Like, what's the plan for the future? You said breaking up into kind of some working groups to tackle some specific topics or concerns. Do you have a sense of like what that will look like? Is this kind of like groups will meet sort of on their own schedules, or like a couple of times a year, or asynchronously, or what do you have a sense of what that will look like yet, or is that still being kind of drawn out?
Yeah, I think that's a really nice thing about this being kind of coordinated by Merck Animal Health is that there's a dedicated team member who part of her job description is to work on well-being initiatives for Merck. And so she's kind of handling a lot of the admin side of this group, which has been super helpful because obviously we're all
That is
very
nice.
busy with
Yeah.
everything. And so she has been kind of taking the lead on scheduling meetings. We've been meeting every other month since July. So we've had, I think, 3, maybe 4, I think the 4th meeting is coming up. And then we're hoping to have another in-person meeting this year and to just continue working on the work. Because obviously there's some things that you can do virtually. There's some things that you can do. There's some asynchronous work happening as well, especially like with defining well-being. We're doing kind of a Delphi methodology, which is essentially like sending out a survey and saying like, hey, what components should go into a veterinary well-being definition? And then, trying to come to a consensus for multiple rounds of surveys. I think we just got through round 3 of the survey and we're getting very close to a consensus definition. So again, it's a combination of asynchronous, live virtual, and then in-person meetings to just continue the work. And it's pretty cool because like I think everybody is just so dedicated to the cause that it's just like there's an energy there that is clearly going to move some of these things forward.
That's so exciting to hear. And I know you said you're as a group sort of discussing ways to incorporate input and potentially participation from others who want to be a part of the movement in some way, potentially in the future.
Yes, and that's like honestly for our next meeting, which I think is next week, is like our big topic of discussion because we have had so much interest in like how can other people get involved. And I see every day like somebody reaching out to me saying like, oh, hey, I'm like developing this initiative or doing this, and like a lot of it is like how can we make sure we're not recreating the wheel with initiatives? Right. How can we for some people who want to help, like maybe the best way to help is, not to recreate something, but to actually get involved in something else that's already happening. So my hope is that by having kind of some outward facing touch points, we can, show people all the work that's being done, which is a lot already. And then we can amplify efforts instead of like recreating efforts and initiatives. So yeah, I should have some more information on kind of how people can get included. But if anybody is interested in becoming involved and like is working actively on well-being related work, you can reach out to me directly and at Addie at MentorVet.net. And I'm happy to kind of, chat through or keep your name on a list because we do want this to be inclusive. And, even if it's something as simple as keeping people engaged with a newsletter that they can stay in touch with, or eventually giving them access to a resource library with all of our, recommended measurement tools or things like that. So I think we're still trying to figure out how to include more. There is benefit in keeping it small because we are able to do a lot when we're focused and small. And so I think there could be tiers of this that start to unfold of how to, it's kind of almost like a new organization growing out of the ground. And we're just trying to figure out, how to be sustainable and successful and bloom. And so I'm excited about all the energy from the people that have emailed me and are doing very important work in different areas. So I do think there's a lot of potential here.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And thank you for being so inviting and open to others reaching out to you and finding ways to be a part of it. I think that'll be great, like you said, to be able to coordinate so much of the work that others are doing. So at the very least, if there's someone who would benefit from something, sort of who to point them towards and help get the word out about all the many programs and resources that are available that so many of our colleagues are working on. So
yes,
it's an exciting time.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you specifically about there's a couple of universities and then the AABMC who are part of the list of participants in the collective. So how important is it to prioritize sort of well-being initiatives during the early years in the veterinary medical education for new members of our profession? And is there do you see there being a real emphasis on that as part of the work that you do?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I think so many people are kind of looking at that with those early years because it shapes so much of, our future. And the more they're exposed to information that's going to help prepare them to succeed, the better off that we'll be as a profession. So I do think there's a real focus at AVMC, with some of the competencies even that are required to be included in the curriculum now. And there's a real focus on supporting also the faculty members that are doing this work at each individual veterinary school. So I think it's very important. And I think there's a few universities that are really doing a wonderful job. And I'll highlight my alum university. I went to University of Tennessee, and they have the International Association of Veterinary Social Work there, and they have not the International Association of Veterinary. They have the University of Tennessee College of Veterinary Medicine Center for Veterinary Social Work. The International Association was also included in the collective, but University of Tennessee has the Center for Veterinary Social Work.
Right.
And they have really pioneered, Dr. Elizabeth Strand and team have really pioneered so much of this work well before any of us were doing this. And I benefited from that in my veterinary school days. I went to UT, graduated in 2015. And I remember Dr. Strand coming to our first year class and talking about suicide prevention and keeping yourself well and healthy. And I will never forget that, that moment that she came into our class and talked to us and said that they were there as a resource. And, I think that was some really early work that really shaped, what we're doing and what kind of resources that we're offering to veterinary students.
Yeah, I love that you gave that example because I feel like when we talk about teaching new students or new early career professionals about some of this, it can be easy. I hear language or comments to suggest, we just need to teach people to be more resilient. We need to teach people to deal with all the rigors of our profession, which to some extent is true. But I love that you highlighted that we also want to teach, like, you don't have to go through this alone, and it's okay to reach out for help, and it's okay to set boundaries, and it's okay. We want you to do those things. We want you to tell somebody if you're struggling, so that we can help make it better, because it's not just the way it's supposed to be, and it's just hard, and you're just supposed to deal with it.
Yes.
So thank you for highlighting that example.
Of course. Yeah. And I think one of the people who represented one of the veterinary schools actually shared that, their students seemed more hopeful than in past years.
Well, that's good to hear.
There was some, it's always hard when you go to a vet school and say, and you hear students say, well, when I burn out, I'm like, oh no,
No.
and there's just like this self-fulfilling prophecy, and so I think one of the faculty members said that she's been hearing some like, more hopeful conversation around like, oh yeah, like I saw this practitioner who works in private practice and she's got a great quality of life and work balance, and I'm getting mentorship from her. And so, I think it's nice to see. I think that there might be some more hope around this.
Yeah. And I think all of us can also help contribute to that by not only passing on the horror stories.
Yeah.
To our future colleagues.
Yes. Yeah. I like to share, especially to, vets who are entering in this career, like the things that I love about veterinary medicine. Like, and so I'll tell them, I love the client relationships like that I build, and that I can establish these relationships where I just know who the owner is and the pet is when I walk into the room. Like that is such a wonderful feeling. And I really love the team and working with a lovely team and having, relationships with the people in my workplace. And, it's all about the people for me. And then, also being able to share like, and I love eyeballs and I can learn about, all these cool procedures, and, there's so much ability for you to learn and grow. And I think oftentimes when our vet students kind of hear like the good sides to the career and the strengths that they might get to see when they're entering into their career, I think that will also help them have like a more hopeful outlook on vet med.
Yes, very much agreed. Well, on that note, talking about all the things that you love, you may remember from the last time, I'm still asking the same question. So I'm going to ask you again, if there's something that you'd like to share that you're excited about in the veterinary medicine profession.
Okay. That's a good question. Yeah, I think I'm excited about this Veterinary Well-Being Collective. I know that's kind of a lame answer because we just talked about it for the last half hour, but I am really excited about it.
It's not. I'm glad you're excited about it.
Yeah, I think it's really going to make a difference. I'm also excited about all the good work that we're doing at MentorVet. Honestly, we've been really growing. We've we've helped thousands of people through our programs, and, we have 5 programs now that we operate, and it's just really exciting to see the work that I do impact so many. And it's just still excited about MentorVet too.
Yeah. Well, it's incredible work that you've done. You've been such a leader and a pioneer in so many ways within the profession. So
thank you.
I'm very grateful to have your enthusiasm and your creativity and your hard work and all the things that you've been working on. Well, I'm so glad that we got to catch up, and I'm curious, do you anticipate that the Veterinary Well-Being Collective will do sort of future write-ups on sort of the progress?
Yeah, that's a great
as things
question.
Go along?
Yeah, I think as we come to like milestones, my hope is to continue to submit white papers and or kind of viewpoints to JAVMA, to AVMA, to say like, hey, our group came to a consensus on what is veterinary well-being to us, and this is how we got to this definition, and here's some associated terminology of what this group is going to adopt as, our common language. And I think things like that will really help also communicate to the industry at large, like what it is that we're doing. We're also working on like a little website on the Merck Animal Health webpage to kind of communicate the work that we're doing as well. So yes, we will continue to share when we have something to share. And yeah, exciting things ahead.
I'm very much looking forward to keeping up with everything that you're doing. Is there anything else that you would like to share with listeners about this topic, or any final thoughts you want to leave?
Final thoughts. Yeah, just do something fun. I don't know. I think we need more fun in this day and age, and I think sometimes things get very serious, and there's just like a lot of things happening in the world that lead to a lot of uncertainty of where are we and where are we going and who am I and what are we doing here. And I don't know, sometimes I would love to see just people having more fun. And like the other day I was like out on a walk and I found this stick and it looked like a Harry Potter wand, and I just like went around and like played with my wand, and like I don't know, I was probably looking like crazy out there with a stick, just playing around with my stick. But yeah, I don't know, just do something fun today. It doesn't matter what it is, but it can be small. But yeah, we need more joy in this world.
Such an important reminder. I love that. Definitely not something I always remember to do on a daily basis. So thank you for that. Well, thanks for catching up with me. I really appreciate it. And we'll look forward to following your work.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a good one.
You too.